Hello, everybody. This is Lauren Schaller, and I have had a very STEMmy lockdown. I've made all sorts of fun things. I like to work with something called bricks, which is very similar to Legos. I made a spaceship. I'm sorry, it's not a spaceship, it's more of a space station. I've had fun with grad class I just took before this one, where it was about engineering principles. So I took apart one of these guys to see how it works in a reverse engineering project. And I devised this complicated hydraulic lift system. Let's see, is this the one? Based on these syringes using hydraulics. There's actually water inside in order to push up something, and I used these connects to figure out how to assemble them, and it was this, ended up being this mega big engineering project. But that's not what I'm here to talk to you about today. So for those of you who haven't scrolled past, this is me talking about an extremely fun, rewarding experience that most definitely uses all areas of STEM. And I'm talking, of course, about Dungeons and Dragons, which I think I might be the only one in this grad program who actually does Dungeons and Dragons, and anybody else who has just hasn't said anything. But if you're still here, great. You may have done it. You may have done some other tabletop role-playing game, but I swear it is very, very STEM. And it's, mostly for adults, so because it has violence in it. It's kind of like a video game. It's like a video game or a movie, and you're actually in the movie or in the video game. But if you have teenagers at home who are no stranger to video games in fantasy realms, then this might just be for you. It is definitely the most fun I've ever had in a social experience, and I've done a lot of things. So it's really just been amazing. So STEM, first of all, D&D involves a lot of math. Not as much as Pathfinder, which is based on an older version of D&D. I'm talking about 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. And in case you don't know, I guess I should explain what it is. You create a character, and your dungeon master, the person in charge of the game, puts you in a setting and gives you situations, and you have to decide what to do. And then you roll dice, usually a d20 like this, to determine, and then you take the numbers of your character based on the skills that your character has, and that determines what happens. So it's make-believe, it's play. Dungeons and Dragons is kind of like more of a Middle Ages fantasy kind of feel normally, although it's getting some more modern influence as well. But it's got quantification in it. You're actually quantifying your experience in a realistic way. So there's a lot of realism in it. So first off, if you're not the person in charge of the whole game, which is a whole different ball of wax, but you create a character. This is my character, Kalika. So these are her statistics. This is telling you how much strength she has, and there's a number actually attached to it. And whenever she does, for instance, anything involving strength, I roll the dice and I add this number because she's relatively strong. And then these numbers tell me how intelligent she is, how wise she is, how healthy she is. And then these are all these skills that she can do in the game. Now, the math that I'm talking about isn't just adding and subtracting, which there's tons of that. And not just for how well a character can do things, but in all sorts of ways. How something, when you attack, how the attack will turn out. Not just that, but how you move. So this is an example of a map. And you and your group of adventurers might be actually going through this town. Your movement is based on how much you can move in a square. So each square equals maybe 10 feet. How much can your character move in 6 seconds, especially during battle? These are really important questions that have big deal outcomes. So everything is calculated and figured out. Not only that, but let's say you can cast spells like a wizard or a sorcerer or a warlock or so many other classes. And then you have spells to choose from. For instance, here are some spells that you can pick. And you look carefully at the spells and how much damage, if it's an attack, that you can cause. So you might have one spell for which to roll on how much damage you've done, you roll 2 d6s, which is what you normally think of as a regular dice. Or maybe you can roll 1 d12. Both add up to 12, but which one would you rather have? So it's decisions like this. Now, that make the game. Honestly, this is better. Why? Because you always get a minimum of 2. Here, you can get a minimum of 1, but because you have 2 dice. So it's just stuff like that that you're figuring out. Maybe you have one spell that doesn't cause a lot of damage, but maybe instead of just attacking one creature, you can attack several. So there's this payoff. You also have to think about, all right, so I want my character to have this feature, because you get choices, so many choices. And you might say, well, I want this feature versus this feature, and you have to weigh probabilities. Say, well, I'm not going to have them just have the ability to navigate a forest, because what if you're not in a forest? So you're thinking a little bit about probabilities. I know that might feel like a loose connection here, but there's so much more than what I can explain in this video. Not just that. Well, let me get back to that. So STEM, let's see, what else? Technology. I would say that technology is involved in this game in various ways, especially because of the lockdown that we're in right now. You can explore, Zoom sessions. So you can do a D&D session with Zoom, and you have to figure out how to show your battlefield. You have to figure out how you're going to show the movement of your characters. So you might actually position your screen or set up a mirror so that everybody can see this battlefield, and they have their little miniature characters navigating the screen. There's also lots of websites and software out there where everybody goes in and you have this screen where you can see your characters moving on the screen, kind of like a video game, but your choices determine where everything goes. Oh, that's also like a video game. But there's a lot of technology that way. In addition, when you're role-playing in your fantasy situation, you might have technology in your game. Maybe just at a small level, but certain characters have tool usage and are thinking of that while they're playing, usually more creative characters. For instance, the character I showed you is what's called an artificer. She doesn't look exactly like that, but she actually invents things magically and then uses those magical inventions and has to be creative when crafting things. Characters in D&D can craft things and have to calculate how long it takes to craft the item based on its value in gold, which is found in numerous lists in D&D. So there's that going as well. So my character looks for opportunities where she saw a bear trap along the way in an adventure and decided to commit to memory how the bear trap was made in case she needed to invent one later or had to figure out how to craft one. So there's definitely use of technology while playing and in the fantasy realm itself with your character and the options and choices that you can make. So engineering, I would say it's the same thing. A character in the game can engineer something, and I've seen a lot of people who play D&D engineer devices to make playing the game more fun, especially in person. Some people have crafted D&D tables. A lot of people create mountains and little landscapes. So this is what I showed you as a 2-dimensional map if you have everybody gathered around a table with you. But you can also create a 3-dimensional mountain, a dungeon with many layers. You can use Legos to create this, so you can engineer that, but also your character in the game can do some engineering. I've heard of a lot of really creative solutions to problems that characters find in the game with limited resources. So there's definitely a lot of engineering to be had. And last but not least, science. I would say science comes into play in the context of the game. For instance, are you crafting explosives? How can you do that with limited resources? Looking at acids. Acids are definitely in the game. What damage do those cause? And animals. There's a lot of animals and monsters in the game. How does their physiology contribute to what's happening on the battlefield or maybe in a different situation? And what are the characteristics of animals? Some characters can change into animals. Certain things like that. So I would argue, and I forgot, along the lines of math and economy, there's this D&D Acquisitions Incorporated is like you want to create an adventuring company. So you would actually, economics could play a role here because you actually create a business-like mindset for your characters in addition to them going on adventures, and you have to manage the resources of your adventuring company. So lots and this is the Sword Coast Guide of the different characters, and there's so many statistics that you could use. There's so much analysis that you can do in this game. The possibilities really are endless. I don't know. I love it. So if you've never considered it and you decided to watch this video just because, hey, why not give it a shot or check it out sometime? Just a thought.